Dear friends, welcome to another episode of Geopolitical and Military News. In this video, we will discuss the recent statements by General Rolly Walker, the new head of the British Army, who said that his country and Europe as a whole need to be ready for war in 3 years, and how European countries are preparing for this. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now, and help us grow. On Tuesday, July 23, General Rolly Walker, the new head of the British Army, said that England is facing a great threat that also extends to all of Europe. For General Walker, this threat is represented by Russia. He stated that, by analyzing the conflict in Ukraine, the Russian armed forces are suffering a very deep attrition that will affect Russia's operational capacity for many years. However, he emphasized that if Putin wins the war, the resources he will obtain from Ukraine, both in raw materials and in labor and soldiers, may be enough to rebuild a part of what he lost in the war. General Walker predicts that within 3, at most 4 years, after a scenario of a Russian victory in Ukraine, Putin will once again have enough means to take revenge on Europe and all the support that many European countries gave to Ukraine. The British general also cited the formation of an anti-European and anti-Western axis, formed by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, referring to the security pact that Putin signed with Kim Jong-un, seen by many as an authentic military alliance. He also mentioned Iran's effort to obtain nuclear weapons, promising to plunge the Middle East into even more conflicts and tensions. For General Walker, a Russia, even weakened after so many years of war, will obtain from this axis of countries the means for what the British officer called Russian revenge against Europe. But what are England and Europe actually doing to face this threat? According to the British officer, the only way to face this threat is through the expansion and modernization of European forces. The British Armed Forces, which a few decades ago were among the largest and most modern in the world, remain very modern and professional, but in numerical terms represent only a small fraction of what they once were. In total, divided between its 3 branches, the British maintain a force of less than 140,000 military personnel, with the Army counting with only 75,000 active personnel and a volunteer reserve force of just over 25,000 soldiers. When we compare these numbers with the forces that Russians and Ukrainians are operating on the battlefield, numbers that hover around 1.2 million soldiers, we see how much the British are lagging in numerical terms. The same thing happens in the Navy, with the Royal Navy, which just a century ago was the largest and most powerful war navy in the world, currently operating only 6 destroyers, exactly the same number of new destroyers that China launches annually. This reduction in British means is a process that began in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union. With the end of the Soviet threat, successive British governments faced strong resistance to maintaining large armed forces, resulting in the progressive reduction of means, leading to a situation classified by General Walker as potentially catastrophic. Since 2022, 31 years after the end of the Soviet threat, Russia has risen again as a great and powerful threat to Europe, a threat that, according to the British officer, must be faced with more means capable of deterring a Russian attack in the future. With an investment of 2.3% of GDP in defense, which translates to £56 billion, equivalent to $72 billion, the United Kingdom has very modern and well-equipped forces in all its branches, but as I mentioned at the beginning, it lacks volume. Even in a context of shared defense within the scope of NATO, with some European countries rushing to address this major and important aspect, Poland stands out. Poland today has the largest European army and the 3rd largest in NATO, with 215,000 military personnel, behind only the United States, with 1.3 million soldiers, and Turkey, with 450,000 active personnel. But the Poles want more, with the government project aiming to reach a total force of 300,000 military personnel, an impressive number, especially when we see that in 2014, just 10 years ago, Poland had less than 100,000 military personnel on active duty. Beyond the numbers, Poland is investing in modernizing its means, acquiring advanced equipment, vehicles, and aircraft such as the F-35, latest generation South Korean tanks and howitzers, and the M1A2 Abrams SEPV-3, the most modern version of the American tank. The motivation of the Poles is the same as that of the United Kingdom, to create armed forces sufficiently strong to deter Vladimir Putin from attacking in the future or, in the extreme, if Putin attacks, to be able to defend themselves, obviously counting on the support of the other 31 members of the alliance. In Germany, since 2022, Chancellor Olaf Scholz has been implementing measures to combat the low readiness level of its forces. And in the nuclear field, the French and the British, the two nuclear powers on the continent, are heavily investing in modernizing their nuclear deterrent means. For centuries, since the end of the Roman Empire, the European continent has been seen as an authentic powder keg, with kingdoms, empires, and countries fiercely fighting for control of resources, trade, or simply as a result of irreconcilable historical disagreements. But thanks to organizations like NATO and the European Union, this long phase of terrible internal conflicts has passed, and in fact, since the end of World War II in 1945, no conflict has been recorded in Central and Western Europe. However, since 2022, with the large-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, Putin threatens to break this tradition of peace, a threat reinforced by the Axis referred to by the British officer, which united under the same intention countries that are showing themselves to be deeply hostile to Europe. For thousands of years, we know that the only way to avoid a conflict is through the demonstration of strength. When a country shows weakness, predatory nations, governed by leaders imbued with a strong expansionist desire, will inevitably try to exploit this weakness through attacks. This happened in Ukraine in 2014 and 2022, and this is what England and Europe as a whole want to avoid happening to them in the future. Thank you for watching the video until the end. If you liked the content, don't forget to leave your like. This helps the channel grow and reach more people. If you didn't like it, leave your dislike and explain in the comments how we can improve. Also, comment on suggestions for topics we can cover here. Insulting comments or those defending dictatorships or war criminals will be summarily blocked. Thank you for your understanding. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing by clicking the subscribe button below and hitting the bell to receive all notifications. Thanks. See you next time.